Okay, so today I have the electrical geyser, and here, let me show you what it looks like. So you can see it has this pre-charge that happens to warn the player, and then it explodes with electrical effects. So this is a pretty cool design toy, and I'm just gonna go over the different layers that make up the electrical effect itself, because it's kind of interesting what actually went into making the effect look the way it does. And I'll start off with the base itself. The base is very simple. It just has a texture on it that changes from black to white to change these individual squares to glowy squares when it's about to go off. The next layer is this electrical pre-charge layer for the ground. So this has electrical ribbons in it that are all mesh based, and I'll show you that in a sec, and it has the 2D electrical effects that I showed off last week and how to do it. So this is what the ribbons themselves look like, and all these are just individual meshes that are colored randomly to offset time, so that way the bolts don't all go off at the same time. Now I modeled about 3 different electrical bolts, and then I just copied them around and scaled them, and these bottom ones are really just made to arc around on the ground. And to make this shape is kind of interesting, I went over and just started with a cube. If you take a cube and you go like this, make it nice and long, delete the extra faces, that way it's nice and flat now, add some edges with the multi-cut tool, then go ahead and move it away from the origin, go into my deform tab and go to non-linear, set it to twist, put a twist modifier on it, and set the angle of the twist modifier to 180, so that way I get this cool cylindrical ribbon effect. Delete history to get rid of the twist modifier, and then from here I just work with the silhouette in soft select, and I just kind of move things around just like this until eventually I have the final bolt effect, which this already kind of looks bolty. So after a little bit of time, you end up with this whole shenanigans happening here with the electrical bolts copied all over the place just to add the nice randomness. Now, I will say I do have a script that automatically vert colors these. It's a random vert color tool. I will post a link to that in the description below for any Maya users out there who would be interested in a random Vertex color script. So the next layer is the pre-charge bolt layer, which is using the exact same techniques but from the top to the bottom, and it's meant to just kind of alarm the player when they're looking straight through the middle of this thing if they're not focused on the floors. And it also kind of adds a neat looking effect to it. The last 2 layers is the burst layer, which is where most of the electrical effects come from. And then there's the tube layer, which is the final layer that encapsulates everything into a nice cube shape to tell the player, hey, you're gonna get hurt inside of this area. On top of that though, this tube layer does another really awesome thing. It actually blocks transparency because the inner layer is opaque. So when I'm inside of this thing, I can't see out, but when I'm outside of it, the refraction is so high that it's grabbing all of the outer edge information and making it look very glass-like. And it's a very convincing effect to make it look like the actual tube itself is transparent, when in reality only the outer layer is transparent and the entire inner layer is opaque. And this helps block overdraw. Now, overdraw is basically saying that these 3 transparent objects are now drawing over each other to get the final rendered look on the screen. And when it does that for every layer, it ends up adding up really quickly to hurt performance. And I'll show you here what it does. In shader complexity, this is a view mode that allows me to visualize this. And you can see when I look at this electrical bolt effect straight on, but with nothing behind it, it has a lot of red, but it's not too terrible. If I look at it with a few in a row, it starts to get this white, and the white is a good indicator that you might run into performance issues soon. So this is something that the tube blocks. So you can see when I look through the tube, everything looks the same no matter what's behind it. And that's because of that opaque inner layer, because inside all it does is just look green. Now this does have a negative impact towards the overall look, because on the inside it does kind of just look like a white noisy nothingness. And this is something that typically a player is not going to focus on because they're trying to jump out of this thing as quickly as possible so they don't get hurt. And that's an overview of all the different layers that went into making the electrical geyser look the way it does.